If you have back pain and you're having to bend over a lot throughout your workday to pick stuff up, then I got a quick tip for you that's helped a lot of my patients in a similar situation, which is whenever you bend over to pick something up, try to lift with your hips and not your back. And now, before you click away, because you feel like you've heard that advice before, the advice that you probably have heard is to lift with your legs and not your back. And what that means is whenever you go to pick something up, really what they're saying is lifting with the legs means lift as a squat, which this squatting movement is honestly really good. It does help to offload the lumbar spine because the lumbar spine is nice and straight as you do the movement. So it's a great piece of advice in general, but practically what I found as somebody who has a history of back pain and what I found as a physical therapist working with a lot of patients who work physically demanding jobs is that extra split second of time that it takes to do a squat versus a bend, and the extra tiny amount of effort that requires means that you end up not actually doing it. So while that is the ideal, in my experience, it's not necessarily practical all the time. So my advice of lift with your hips, basically what that means is you can still bend, but bend better. Now to demonstrate what I mean by that, I'm gonna show you what a bend movement really is. Whenever I bend forward to pick something up, touch the ground, whatever the case may be, and if I'm not squatting, basically what that means is I'm not moving the knees, then I really have two movements going on. One is bending at the lumbar spine, like this. You can see I can't get down all the way. Most people can't. This is, I don't know, maybe 70% of the way there. And what's stopping me here is just that my low back is saying, hey, I can't go anymore. I'm just reaching the joint and range of motion. And the next thing I can do as part of that bending movement is a hip hinge. So what that looks like is this movement here. And you see, I can get down to a pretty similar spot. Maybe it's about 70% on range of motion. What's limiting me from going further here is actually hamstring length. So at this bottom range position, I can feel my hamstrings on a stretch. And if you are a normal human being, you will probably feel the same thing. Now, the advice of lifting with your hips and not with your back, what I mean by that is use as much of the hip hinge as is possible per the situation. So if I'm picking something up that, let's say, has an elevated handle like this, then what that means is, for myself, I can bend over and pick this up with a pure hip hinge. I don't have to get any lumbar flexion because that surface is elevated that I'm grabbing. Now, if you are having to bend down all the way to the ground, then you are going to have to do a combination of the two movements. The key, though, is that we use as much of a hinge as is possible to accomplish the movement. So if from here to the ground is 100% of my range of motion, then 70% of it better still be the hip hinge, and then the last 30% can be the lumbar flexion. I don't want it to be a 50-50. I want to use as little lumbar flexion as is required to get the job done. And a quick way for you to know, are you doing that properly or are you not, is do you feel hamstring stretch at the bottom of that range of motion? If you don't, then you haven't maximized the hip hinge. So to reiterate, if you're finding yourself having to bend over a lot throughout your day, let's say because you work a physically demanding job, or because you're a busy parent having to clean up after your kid, like I was just doing 20 minutes ago, then try to use that cue of lift with your hips and not your back. Hinging forward at the hips takes just the same amount of time and just the same amount of effort as rounding forward at the lumbar spine. So it's just an improved way to do that bending movement. And I've seen a ton of success with my patients with this simple piece of advice. Even if we don't do any exercise stuff, when we just make this slight change, a lot of people's back pain will start to get better. If this piece of advice is helpful for you, you like this kind of content, then I highly recommend following me on whatever platform you're watching this on. My name is Dr. Brandon Lonstein, and I specialize in helping people who work a physically demanding job fix and prevent their pain.